Yeah. Hi. Good morning, everyone. And I hope you all can hear me clearly. In case if it's not the case, please send me a message through the inbox so you can, simply tell me that verbally as well. So the very purpose of this session is to educate the potential applicants who are planning on applying for Nordic countries through Eduzone about our application process, common, the common. I'll quickly, yeah. So the very purpose of having this discussion is to educate our, potential applicants about the whole process. And before I come to that, I'd like to explain you a bit about our firm as a company. So Eduzone has been one of the two firms of the similar nature that was involved in placing Sri Lankan students at Nordic universities from as early as 2010. I can very confidently tell you that we are the very first firm in Sri Lanka to promote higher education in Finland, again from 2010. And for the moment, we have a scholarship record worth over billion rupees. And I think it's probably, again, the highest number of scholarships for a single firm, a smaller firm like us, at least for the Nordic countries. And recently, I had a calculation of the number of applicants we have processed over the years. And I believe we have, at the moment, processed over 1,500 Sri Lankan nationals over the last 13 years to study in these countries. It may not be a very high number, but still it's a number that we can feel happy about ourselves. Because when we started promoting these countries, I recall those who had previous visa refusals for countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and the UK, and maybe the US. They're the ones who actually approached us because they wanted to find an option where they have, no impact, no an impact based on their previous refusals. So that's how we started. But today, I'm very happy to announce that pretty much every single applicant of ours uh, is a first timer. We get a small number of applicants who have had previous refusals, but the vast majority of them, at least, are first timers. They want to try Sweden or Finland or any of these Scandinavian countries as a first time applicant. So let's continue to the second slide. It's pretty much the same thing. I have mentioned here a bit about our firm, about our 13 years of history, and about the fact that we are one of the first two firms in Sri Lanka to promote higher education in Sweden. And then we are certainly the first firm in Sri Lanka to promote higher education in Finland as a commercial entity, as a private profit-oriented business. And we have processed many number of Sri Lankan citizens over the years to go and study in these countries. We have a bit of a good scholarship record under our belt. And most importantly, this is very important because I receive so many inquiries from applicants saying things like we don't answer phone calls on time, we don't provide information as much as possible throughout the year. And there's a reason for that. We only process about 50 to 60 qualified applicants a year because some of those who know about the process, for Finland especially, you will agree that they have only a limited time period to process your applications. Usually it's about 2 to 4 weeks, and there's always a limit of numbers we can accommodate during that time period. So that naturally creates a barrier for us. We only can accept a very limited number of applicants because we have to personally focus on the application processes, and to do that, there's always a limit of applications we can process during this 2 to 4 weeks of time period. And that's the very reason why we strictly limit our intake to about 50 to 60 applicants a year. Sometimes can go up to about 70, depending on the year and the circumstances. But that's the maximum we usually process. And that's why most of the times during a calendar year, we do not answer phone calls, or we do not accept new inquiries because we are so engaged with the ongoing application process. So we work in a way, we accept a number of applications first, process them. Once the applications are finalized, then we start accepting another batch of students. And that's how we have done this over the last 13 years. And it has proven to be effective as far as my opinion goes. So let's continue with the other slide. It's about the entry requirements to apply for a scholarship. As you may know, all these countries, especially countries like Norway, Sweden, Finland, and even Estonia, they don't provide education at a commercial level like countries like Australia and New Zealand do. The reason is education is not a profit-oriented business for them. Yes, we have made it a kind of a profit-oriented venture, but from their perspective, it's all about selecting a highly qualified, a small number of international applicants. So for that, you need to actually have a bachelor's degree. And if you're especially planning on applying for a scholarship, it's better if you have at least a second lower or second upper for your bachelor's. Because nowadays the process has become highly competitive because these countries have, become very popular over the last couple of years or so. So I can give one example. In 2020, during the beginning of the pandemic, COVID-19, the students wanted to have a method where they can bypass the requirement of going to New Delhi to identify yourself for biometrics. And during that time, they signed this petition, each and every student who were planning to go to Sweden that year. And I recall they had about 100 to 120 applicants who signed up that petition. And out of this 120 something applicants, students who are going there to Sweden from Eduzone were around 40, something around 40 to, almost like 1/3 of the whole number. So my whole point is, in the year 2020, the number of students who chose Sweden for their higher education was around 120. And in the year 21 and 23, it has gone up to more than 500. So the numbers keep increasing, but they still have a limited number of, enrollments they can accept. And for that reason, you have to be highly qualified in order to have an admission most of the time, especially if you're planning on applying for a scholarship. So it's better if you can have a bachelor's with a second lower, second upper, or at least, at least a second lower, second upper. Or if you have a first class, obviously your chances are very good. So the second requirement is English proficiency test scores. Normally, if you have completed your degree in English medium, you don't really need an IELTS score or similar score for the country Sweden, because they accept students who have completed their bachelor's degrees in English medium, provided the medium of instruction is clearly mentioned on the transcript they have. But for all other countries, be it Norway or Finland, you still need to have an IELTS score of 6.5 with 6 for each component at the academic module, unless you have physically completed your degree in one of these English-speaking countries like UK, USA, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. So that's something you have to be concerned of. And the very reason why we are conducting these information sessions as early as possible is because then we can give you some room to fulfill these requirements. And then, when you start accepting new applications after 1st of June, you can approach us. And by that time, you'll be able to submit your IELTS score, which allows us to apply for plenty of options together. Because I noticed this category of students, they have done exceptionally well. They have first classes for their degrees, but they're kind of reluctant to complete the test IELTS. And that only leaves you with the option Sweden, which I really don't want you to, do, because if you have a class for your bachelor's and if you help us with the right IELTS score, there are very high chances you can save millions of money by at least securing a partial scholarship. Plus, your chances of getting selected into a university also will increase, because you can, kind of have added the academic merits by increasing or by obtaining an IELTS score. The second requirement for Sweden nowadays is that you need to have, if you have graduated from a Sri Lankan university, they expect you to have a bachelor's with at least 4 years in length. It's a very recent addition to the requirements by university admissions in Sweden. So you can no longer apply with a general degree. You must have a special degree of 4 years, or in case the only exception is if uh, if you have completed a general degree, 3-year bachelor's degree followed by a master's, then you will qualify. So it's kind of a strange scenario because previously this particular requirement was only available for Indian students, but from this year onwards, they have imposed this requirement. If you come from Sri Lankan university, if you have completed your first degree from a Sri Lankan university, it has to be 4 years in length. It's an absolute must unless you have completed a master's. So you need to have a degree with a class. You need to have an IELTS score of 6.5 is 6 for each component. And you also need to have a bachelor's that is at least 4 years in length. So those are the 3 key requirements. And the other one is you are able to pay a fee and study there, but that's something you have to plan well, because in reality, when you go into these non-English speaking countries, it'll take some time for you to find a job that you can, use to cover up some of your living expenses and your tuition fees. So my understanding of that is, if you're planning on picking this country, Sweden or Finland or any of these European countries, if you're paying a tuition fee, it's better if you can pay your fee for at least the first year, because that gives you some time to recoup the money required for the second year. Plus, the second requirement is you also must have at least 6 months worth of living expenses, because finding a job a day or a week or a couple of weeks after your arrival is not really possible in these countries. It might take you about 2 or 3 or 4, sometimes 5 months to find you a job. For that reason, I recommend you to have sufficient funds. If you're paying a tuition fee, please have it for at least the first year. And you also have to have sufficient living expenses, at least for the first 6 months, to be able to, successfully make it. That will kind of reduce all the risks, and especially the risk of returning, because if you don't manage to pay your tuition fees and continue to study there as a student, you may face some negative consequences. So it's always better to be prepared financially before you make that decision to go there. So the other requirement is applicable only for those students who have a management related degrees. Like, for an example, if you have your degree in business management or accountancy or economics or finance, I recommend you to take up the test GMAT and have a score of at least 400 or more, because most Swedish universities nowadays, especially universities like University of Uppsala, Gothenburg University, and also Umeå University, they give first preference to those who have completed GMAT. So having GMAT will increase your chances, definitely, because the number of students who are willing to put in some effort to complete GMAT is always a very small one. Same goes with Finland. Some high-ranking Finnish universities, like Aalto University, for an example, have made it a compulsory requirement. So if you're planning on applying for Aalto University in Finland for something related to economics or management, having GMAT is an absolute must. Same goes with universities like Oulu. They have made it compulsory for some programs to have applicants with GMAT. But at the moment, the program they have called International Business Management has 2 groups. Those with GMAT get the first priority. And if you don't have a GMAT score, then you have the second priority to be admitted. My recommendation is that if you have a first class degree or second upper, say for an example, if you have a first class degree and IELTS, you might be able to get into a group of for an example, if you can get into a group of about 100 applicants, those with the first class GMAT and IELTS will be around 5 or 6 or 10 maximum. That's how it is. So you'll have increased chances to be highlighted during the selection process if you have both IELTS and GMAT. So this is applicable anyway for management graduates. There's no other requirement, no such requirement for other programs. So if you have a business management degree, you still have some options that you can apply without GMAT, so don't worry about it. It's not an absolute must, but having GMAT will certainly increase your chances to get admitted to a good university. And also the last one is you should have the ability to pay remaining tuition fees if admitted for a partial scholarship. Because as you may know, these countries offer scholarships in large numbers, like that includes fully funded scholarships to 100% tuition fee waivers to partial fee waivers. So in case if you get a partial fee waiver, it's an absolute must for you to be able to cover up the remaining part of the tuition fees, at least for the first year, because otherwise you'll face difficulties with recouping this tuition fee during such a short time period, because it takes at least 4, 5, 6 months in most cases for you to find a proper job that will pay you a reasonable amount of money. And then you will be left with no time to pay for the second semester. So it's always better to be prepared to pay for at least the entire first year out of your pocket. So let's continue to the other slide. It's about the disadvantages of Nordic countries. I want to start with the disadvantages before moving on to advantages, so you can have a kind of a balanced idea about what to expect. The biggest disadvantage I see there, the language barrier. All these countries, they have language of their own, and Nordic languages are known to be quite difficult to learn. But anyway, they have huge numbers of immigrants living there, so it must not be that much of a problem, especially over the years. But initially, when you get into these countries, you'll have difficult time because you don't know word of the local language. Yes, you can survive if you visit a public place, if you visit a restaurant, if you visit like a store somewhere. Yes, most of them, they speak English as a second language. But finding a job without knowing a word of their language can be a trouble. So that's one of the biggest disadvantage I see in these countries. And the second one, obviously, is the harsh climate. These are like a very cold countries located in the northern part of the world. So you will have some difficulties adapting into the new climate. Some of them, not every one of you, but that can be considered a disadvantage as well, since we have lived in a tropical country for pretty much all our lives, most of us. And the third one is the possible cultural shock, because these countries are not known to be that multiracial, like a country like Australia, for an example, or Canada. So especially when you move out of the capital city, you might not experience that many South Asians or Asians in general. So that could create a bit of a cultural shock. Again, for some, this is not applicable for everyone, but for some, yeah, it can be difficult, at least for the first few months. And the important most one is difficulties in finding employment. As I said earlier, without knowing a word of language, their language, uh, it may not be easy for you to find a job right after moving there. To overcome that issue, I highly recommend anyone who choose these countries, even if you apply directly or even if you apply through another agent, I recommend you to have a sufficient amount of funds, at least for the first 6 months. Usually, on the minimum, I recommend our applicants to have at least 1.8 to 2 million rupees set aside for your living expenses. This gives you uh, basically, this gives you at least 3 months of time, 6 months of time to find a job which can really help you out, because you can have at least kind of a peaceful mind. You have 6 months time, full work right, so it's up to you to go out and find a job, which is not actually impossible, because all of our clients, pretty much every single one of them, manage to find employment one way or another after like first 4 5 months after arrival. So it's very realistic or very possible for you to find a job, but not immediately. So you have to be prepared for that for sure. So these are the biggest disadvantages I see in these countries. And I highly recommend you to you do your own research before coming into a final decision whether to apply through us or not. It's entirely up to you. You can even apply directly, and I highly recommend that, especially if you have very high academic merits and if you have very high English writing skills, and if you have the ability to present yourself good. But the whole point is you have to be thinking of these disadvantages, do your research, and then come into a decision whether to apply or not. That's the best thing to do. So let's continue to the advantages. As you can see, there are many advantages of choosing these countries. The very first one I see is the availability of scholarships. As some of you may know, all these countries, be it Norway, Sweden, Finland, or even Estonia, these countries have had a complete free education system open to international students at some point of time. If I start with Sweden, they introduced the tuition fees for international students back in 2011. So after that, they have been charging a tuition fee ever since, but still they do have tuition fee waivers ranging from 100% fee waivers to fully funded scholarships to partial fee waivers. And still, it's very possible for at least a certain percentage of all applicants uh, to secure scholarships. Even that can even be fully funded ones. For an example, there's something called Swedish Institute. Some of you may know that already, and they grant fully funded scholarships to a selected number of applicants, mostly based on leadership and work experience. And for an example, last year we had 12 applicants from Sri Lanka who were fortunate enough to be able to secure SI scholarships, and 4 of them, 1/3 of them, were our clients. And even the year before that, I think we had about 8 applicants from Sri Lanka, and we had 3. So that's how it is. You have a possibility to secure even a fully funded scholarship. Yes, the chances are low, but still they offer fee waivers in large numbers. So that's one advantage. If I move to Finland, they introduced their tuition fees in 2019, and it's only been about 3 years, and they still offer scholarships in large numbers. In fact, we received our first couple of admissions day before yesterday, and for Finland, those were the first 2 to come, and both of those applicants had 75% worth of tuition fee waivers for Finland. So that's how it is. Since they introduced the tuition fees so recently, they try their level best to grant a scholarship of some kind. And mostly these are like real scholarships, not like tuition fee discounts where they reduce $2,000-3,000. These scholarships, if granted, will cover at least 50% of your tuition fees, or sometimes even 100, or it can even be fully funded scholarships. So the biggest advantage I see in these countries is the availability of scholarships, the availability of real scholarships. By real, what I meant to say is, like, you have the possibility to get a fully funded fee waivers. Like, you don't have to pay anything. They'll pay the tuition fee and the living expenses for the entire 2-year duration for masters. And you also have 100% fee waivers. And then you have partial fee waivers. And even partial fee waivers are mostly capped at around 50% at the minimum. So that's the biggest advantage I see. If you have a degree with a class, the right IELTS score, the right approach, then there are very high chances for you to secure a scholarship. We last year processed, I think, we had about 10 direct applicants. Every person together, I think we processed about 75 to 80 applications last year. And out of these 75, around 37 or 38 applicants had scholarships. That's the ratio. So at least pretty much half of our applicants had scholarship, even as of last year. So the second advantage is the social security benefits available. I know as a fact that since I live in Australia, if a family comes there to study a master's program, you're not entitled for most of the social security benefits. In fact, all of the social security benefits granted to a local resident. If you send your child to a daycare, you obviously have to pay money out of your pocket, and it can usually cost you about at least 2/3 of the minimum wage if you send a child to a daycare. I'm just giving you an example. I'm not condemning any nation. All these countries have its pros and cons, but that's a fact. In fact, the biggest thing I notice when I compare these countries. In countries like Spain and Finland, they charge no tuition fees for your children if you send them to schools, and even at daycares. These are like highly, like most of these options are funded by the respective government, so you don't really pay anything, even to send a child to a daycare. And even if you pay, the amount you pay is usually capped at around 50 euros, which is about 20,000 Sri Lankan rupees a month. And I believe you cannot find a daycare even in Sri Lanka for that price range. So that's how it is. And you also get some healthcare benefits, especially in countries like Sweden. If you go there as a master student for a program that's lasting more than a year, you are entitled to access their healthcare system. And even in Finland, they have somewhat of a similar setup in place that's available to even international students. The third one I see is the ability to apply for a work permit, even with an entry-level kind of a job offer. This is true at the moment as we speak. The requirements still remain in place. The requirement is to find a job offer that pays you the minimum salary requirement they have estimated to be able to apply for a work permit. So they have a salary requirement, yes, but there's no such a requirement as to like you have to find a job offer that's directly related to education or previous experience. So there's no such a requirement in any of these countries as far as I know at the moment. They do have salary requirement, but that's it. They way to like give you like a more simple idea is that I have seen some of our clients who have managed to secure work permits by working for cleaning companies, by working for delivery companies, and all that. And I don't think it's possible in any of these Western countries like Australia, New Zealand, Canada, or any of these countries, um, as far as I know. And the other one I already explained you about accessible healthcare facilities. Yes, you have healthcare benefits to a certain extent, and you don't need to purchase any insurance for countries like Sweden. For Finland, yes, there's a requirement for you to purchase an insurance policy. But again, when you go there and register in the population registry, then you have access to certain social security benefits, including healthcare. And that's one of the biggest advantages I see in these countries. Because most of our clients, they go together as a family with small children, so they have to basically, you know, uh, enroll them in schools there. They resign from their jobs in Sri Lanka. So you're taking a bit of a risk. But when it comes to social security benefits, I think these countries kind of reduce the overall risk or the stress you have because the healthcare facilities, the education facilities, at least these two, primary concerns of most of us are covered by their respective governments. So that will kind of reduce the overall stress you have during the time you spend there as a student. And the other one also, I covered it already. They offer free education for your children, including state-funded daycare facilities. And if I move into the next point, it's about the ability to study all vocational training in local language, free of charge. That is something even I learned from some of my clients. All these countries, be it Sweden or Finland, if you learn the local language to a certain extent, they call it level D. It's not the lowest level, it's somewhere in between. It'll take some time for you to study up to that level. But if you learn the language to a certain extent, all vocational training in these countries are provided free of charge to immigrants. For an example, if a couple goes there, wife as the main applicant, as the student, and if husband stays there and work during that time period, he has the complete right to study the language up to the expectations of the relevant country, and then start something he likes in the local language free of charge. And that also includes, if you find a job offer, especially in a country like Sweden and Finland, if the spouse find a job offer that meets the requirements to apply for a work permit, he or she can apply for a work permit without waiting for the main applicant, the student, to complete his or her education. That's also one of the advantage I see. And the last one, obviously, is all these points, get us into one particular advantage, which is like they have an inclusive system that helps the immigrants to assimilate into the society, because all these countries again they have certain support systems, like they offer free education for your children, they offer you certain healthcare benefits, they offer you the opportunities to learn the language. And the last one, I can give you another point. I had a conversation with one of my former clients, who now lives in Finland. He's balancing between Finland and Maldives because he works in the Maldives. And he told me when he signed up with this particular state employment agency in Finland, every single week he receives a call from Finland all the way to Maldives, where his counselor in Finland discuss about the opportunities they have for him to find a job in Finland. And he's still on a resident permit. He's still on a resident permit under his wife was the main applicant as a student there. So I don't think that kind of support is available anywhere in these mainstream countries, most at least pretty much every single other country. Because if you are a permanent resident or a citizen, it's a different scenario. But in this case, he's still on a resident permit as a student, as a dependent of a student, and he has access to all these test supports. But there's also something I need to tell you. Some students I've heard they actually it's very unfortunate. There are certain social security systems available in these countries, and I've heard of stories where they claim unemployment benefits and all that from the relevant governments. And I don't think it'll kind of keep these options open to us for a very long time, because when we apply for a student visa, we are expected to show proof of funds, which will prove them that okay, when I come into your country, I'll be able to spend my money out of my pocket during the entire study duration. But what happens with some of students is when they go there, they apply for unemployment benefits, which they can claim in most cases. But that gives us a very, I mean, that leaves a very bad impression about Sri Lankan nationals in general. So there's such a situation at the moment, happening in countries like Finland as well. So, but the whole point is they have these support systems. So the overall risk you have is minimal, provided you are able to pay your tuition fees for at least the first year, and you are able to cover up your living expenses at least for the first 6 months. So let's move into the next slide. It's about the things to be concerned of. I covered pretty much all these things on the during the previous slides, but I'll tell you again. The first thing to be concerned is the fact that you might either be in a scholarship or have the ability to pay at least for the first 2 semesters. That's something you should seriously think of. The second one is the sufficient funds you have to cover up your living expenses at least for the first 6 months. My estimation is on the minimum 1.8 to 2 million. When you go there as a family. And also you must have that willingness to study the local language, because especially if you're planning on living in these countries for a longer time, you must be able to, speak at least the basics of the language. So you had to put in extra efforts for that. You had to balance your language classes in between your employment and studies. But, putting in some efforts to learn the language will help you greatly in the long run. So the other point is the ability to, secure a full-time offer for the spouse, even during the study time period of the main applicant. That's up to you. That depends on the individual skills, but there's a possibility. There's always a possibility for you to apply for a full-time offer and then to apply for a work permit. And for an example, last year I had a client of mine. He went to Finland in the month of August, and he called me around, I think, October last year, and informed me that he already secured a full-time job offer and applied for a work permit. So it's possible. It's an option. It's not something everyone can try, but the opportunity to apply is always there for everyone. And the other point I see is it's a bit of a request. My advice to anyone who go to these countries is to complete the purpose you are there for. If you go there for studies, complete your qualification, please, and then consider, what else to do. You may have plenty of other options. You may be able to find employment. You may be able to find an offer for a PhD. It's entirely up to you. But if you complete the primary purpose, you are there. These countries will allow Sri Lankans to come in large numbers. Because it has happened with Sweden. Some of the Swedish universities I have noticed, when you apply for certain universities, there's this tendency of receiving an interview from the migration agency, because they need to ensure you are a genuine applicant before they allow you a visa. But in the past, when you started this business in 2010, until around 2016, we never even had a refusal because the numbers were like at the minimal one, and every single person who went there, they actually, they completed their studies before, finding alternatives to stay there, at least most of them. But now the ground has been changed over the last few years. Now there are all kinds of students choosing these countries for studies. Some with genuine intentions, some simply want a way out of the country. So my advice is for all of you, please complete your studies first before considering your options of staying in the country in the long run. That will do good for you, and that also will do good for others who want to follow you after you. So let's move on to the next slide. It's about the application process. If you apply through Eduzone, it's mainly a three-step process. There's an assessment process, there's an actual application process, and the visa process. During the assessment process, we can help you identify what to apply with increased chances to be able to secure a scholarship or secure an admission. And during the actual application process is all about receiving the right documents from your end, the right information, and then we can prepare all the applications for you and submit. And the last one, obviously, is the visa process. So when you're admitted to a university, we can discuss about the requirements we need from your end to process your visa and then finalize it. So it's basically a three-step process if you apply through us. And if I describe more about the assessment process, you need to submit us copies of your degree certificate, the transcript, and a passport copy, together with the assessment fee. Um, we charge our application fees and all service charges in Australian dollars. Because we now function as an Australian company for payment purposes. During the crisis, we had no other option but to do it. So what we charge is we charge 150 Australian dollars for the assessment process. Together with that, you have to submit your degree cert, transcript, and the passport. And once you hand over these documents, we can spend about a couple of weeks. And within a couple of weeks, we can provide you with a list of options available with increased chances for you to apply for a scholarship and an admission. That's the first step. The second step is the actual application process. So once we hand over you the assessment results, you can pick your options. We usually apply for up to 4 options from Sweden and up to 4 options from Finland. So we can collectively apply for up to 8 options. And for individual applicants, we also add options from Norway and Estonia, because I don't see these countries as family-friendly options, especially during the visa process. Yes, you're allowed to bring family members, but for Norway and Estonia, it's a bit of a complicated process. So as a firm, it's not sustainable for us to accommodate married applicants. For that reason, if you apply through us to Sweden and Finland, it's a very simple process. Families can go together at the same time. There's no, it's not a complex process at all if you provide the right documents. But if you're an unmarried applicant, we also add 2 options from Norway and 2 from Estonia if you'd like to apply. So you'll have more options to apply through us. So it's basically we apply up to 8 options for Sweden and Finland. And if you apply for Norway and Estonia, you will be applying for 12 options altogether. So that will give you at least 1/8 of chances to be selected for a scholarship. Or it'll be 1 out of 12 for those applicants who had Norway and Estonia. So that's the actual application process. If I move to the visa process, it's different from one country to another. But to give you a basic idea, if I start from Sweden, it's a completely electronic process. You don't fill up any paper applications or anything. You receive your admission, and then you have to fill up an online form, upload certain documents, and you have to then apply for your visa. That's how it is done. When you apply for a visa, I recommend everyone to be able to have proof of funds for at least 10,000 euros for one applicant. For an example, if you have a family of 3, I recommend you to have about 30,000 euros for a family of 3. If you're a married couple, then it at least 20,000 euros. And if you're an individual applicant, I recommend you to have at least like 10,000 euros or more. These are not the figures required by these countries, but if you have at least 10,000 euros for one applicant, then it'll, you are likely to fulfill the requirements set by the Swedish or Finnish government. For Norway, it's a different story. For Norway, you have to transfer a certain amount of funds to your university there and then apply for a visa. They don't accept bank statements issued in Sri Lanka or anywhere for that matter, but you have to have funds estimated by them for you to apply for a resident permit. And usually the amount as of last year is around 3.5 million Sri Lankan rupees. And it can continue to increase this year, but at the moment it's around 3.5 million, about 3.5 million Sri Lankan rupees. And for Estonia, the amount required is less than 10,000 euros. And, the difference between these processes, then for Norway, it's a very simple process. They have embassy representation here, so you don't have to go anywhere. You apply, you print your application out, you visit VFS and hand over documents and your payment, and they will start processing. But for Sweden and Finland, the process is again electronic. You fill up an application online, pay for your application online, and then you have to make an appointment with the relevant embassy in New Delhi. But again, the visit to New Delhi is one time in and out visits. So you don't have to visit these countries repeatedly. You book your appointment, you visit the embassy, identify yourself, and then your visa will be processed. If it's granted, they have a system to courier your resident permit cards. They now issue these electronic cards to the local consul for Sweden, and they courier these cards to VFS for Finland in Kalam. So that's the kind of the basic idea I can give you about the process. For Estonia, it's still old school kind of a process. You fill up your application, you gather all the documents, make an appointment with the embassy in India, you visit there, hand over your documents, and until they make the decision, you have to be there in India. And usually they take about 10 working days to process. And Estonia, anyway, is good for ICT applicants, especially those who come from the software industry. It's one of the best options, especially if you're an unmarried applicant and if you have a bachelor's with a class, because Estonian universities, they only have 2-3 good universities. It's a very tiny country, but again, ranking wise, they're some of the best in the European Union. And as a country, they have one of the fastest growing ICT-based economies in the whole world. So it's good for those who are in the IT sector and those who are still single. So about the visa process, there's many things we can talk about, but I think this gives you kind of a basic idea about where to start and what to do. And those who apply through us could always, approach us and, have these things discussed again in details. And even if you apply yourself or even if you apply to another agent, please feel free to contact, and we're more than happy to share whatever information we know with you. Because at the end of the day, our primary focus is to see a sustainable a number of applicants with genuine intentions going to these countries for the years to come. That's this whole intention. And I would like to talk about the costs involved in the process. Usually, as I said, if you apply through us, we charge an assessment fee of 150 Australian dollars. And during the application process stage, application fees, we charge about 950 Australian dollars. So that these are the two figures you pay us before you move to the visa step. So it's 150 AUD and 950 AUD. And you also have to pay your visa fees. If I start from Norway, the visa fee for Norway is about 5,500 Norwegian kroners. I'm really not familiar with the exchange rate as of today, so I'm not going to quote anything in Sri Lankan rupees. So it's about 5,500 Norwegian kroners for Norway. For Sweden, it's about 1,500 Swedish kroners for each adult applicant. And if you have a child, then you pay half of that amount, about 750 Swedish krona. And one Swedish krona at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, is about 34 rupees. So basically, it's about 55,000 for an individual applicant and half of that for a child for Sweden. For Finland, the amount involved is about 350 euros for the student, 470 euros for the spouse, and 270 for each child. So they have some of the expensive most visa fees, but still, since it's option, that offers plenty of scholarships, um, you'll be saving a lot of money. And there's always a commission for us. Once we finalize your process, once your visa is granted, you have to pay us about, if you have a scholarship for more than 70% of the course value, we charge about 2,000 Australian dollars from the main applicant and extra $500 from spouse. We don't charge any fees from children. So it's 2,500 Australian dollars paid to us if you manage to secure a scholarship for more than 70% of the actual tuition fee value. In case if you receive a scholarship with an amount less than 70% of the tuition fee value, or in case if you decide to go there as a fee paying applicant, then our commissions will be reduced to 1,500 Australian dollars from the main applicant and $500 from the secondary applicant or your spouse. That's what you pay us once your visa is successful. And apart from that, you also have to think about air tickets, and there's always mostly like 2 tickets involved here for each applicant. The first one is to go to New Delhi at some point of time for Sweden and Finland. Yes, it's a one-time in and out visit. You don't have to spend multiple days there, but you have to go there at some point of time, and you have to think about your air ticket cost to New Delhi, which I believe is around 150, 160,000 at the moment. And this, the second ticket is to go to your destination from Sri Lanka to Stockholm or Sri Lanka to Helsinki or Sri Lanka to Oslo or wherever your destination is. You have to think about that air ticket as well. And there's always other expenses. In terms of other expenses, talking about these the expenses you may have to legalize your documents, may have to renew your passport, may have to spend money along the way for your travel and all that. That's something you have to think of. So these are the, on average, I can give you like an average estimation. If any one of you go, manage to go to Sweden on a full scholarship, like 100% fee waiver, I think you still need to have about, on average, about 4 million rupees for a family. If you're an individual applicant, yes, the amount will come down. But for a family, you are still, even if you have like 100% scholarship, when you add your 6 months worth of living expenses and the initial cost, I think you'll need about good 4 to 5 million rupees. But if you go there as an individual applicant, then this amount will come down to about 3.5 million something. That's the kind of budget you should have in mind. The only exemption is if you secure a fully funded scholarship from Swedish Institute or Finland scholarship, then obviously the amount you spend will be just our charges. That's all. Because and in some cases you may have to go to New Delhi still on your own. But other than that, there's no tuition. There will be no tuition fees and no living expenses. So that's about it. And the final one, I know for sure we all are like migrating for the purpose of settling down. Most of us, the vast majority of us, the whole point is, how to apply for your permanent residency after completion of your studies. That's a very common question we receive, and I know about it. So for the moment, I'm planning on discussing about 2 major pathways you have. You also have a third pathway, which is to run a business and to fulfill their requirements of applying for PR, which I'm not going to discuss at this stage. But if I talk about these 2 stages, the first one is to apply for a work permit. And generally, in countries like Sweden and Finland, the requirement to apply for permanent residency is to live there on a type A visa for a period of 4 years. So in Sweden, you still receive something called type B visas. So that doesn't allow you to kind of consider your visa as a work permit, especially if you apply for your bachelor's and master's. At the doctoral level, they grant you a visa that's considered equivalent to work permit. So anyone who study there, at the PhD level, is able to apply for their permanent residency if they take at least 4 years for their PhD to be completed. But everyone else are expected to find a job apply for a work permit, and then live in the country for at least 4 years' time before apply for your permanent residency. The second one is PhD pathway, which I already explained technically. If you apply for a PhD and if you're selected, your visa is usually considered a work permit. So if you spend 4 years on your work permit, you can apply for your permanent residency. This is for Sweden. In Finland, it's a bit of an improved situation. Last year, I think if I'm not mistaken, on 15th of April, they brought this legislative change saying that anyone who go there on a student visa is now granted the Type A visa. So theoretically, if you go there for your master's, for an example, you get a 2-year stay on a Type A visa as a student. And once you complete your studies, you get another couple of years as like a post-study visa holder to look for employment, again on a Type A visa. So that these two time periods combined, you get 4 years of time, which technically make you eligible for your permanent residency. There's no other requirement. And I think that's one of the reasons why Finland has become so popular lately, because I don't think that exists anywhere else in the world, that kind of a system. Because even if you go to Australia, you have to complete your studies, then work there, apply for skill assessment, get your IELTS done, and then think about PR or 491 or whatever visa available to you. But in this case, if you're admitted for a university, as of the current requirements, you can fulfill the requirements to apply for PR at the completion of your post-study time period. Most of the times, I really can't confirm this at the moment because I have never seen anyone completing their 4 years time period since this requirement was introduced in 15th of April. But anyway, these countries have always been very smooth options. And I think now we have a very large number of Finnish and Swedish citizens and permanent residents that managed to go to these countries through us in the past. And those are the like a key, like a major pathways you have to apply for your PR. But apart from this, you obviously have options like running a business, and they have their different requirements to be able to apply for permanent residency. But if you look carefully, if you do your own research, you'll be able to find them, by your own. So let's move to the next slide. It's about the questions. I'd like to take in a few questions from you. What you can do is you can, type your questions in the inbox, or you can even ask it verbally. It's your call to make. Yeah. So I think there's no questions today. Faushan is asking about the tax rates in Finland. No, I have no idea about it. To inform you, but you can easily find it online for sure. But I think it's first, if I'm not mistaken, the first 10,000 euros is tax free. And then they have certain tax brackets. By end of the day, I'm not familiar about the exact tax rates at the moment. Yeah, the same thing for Sweden. As far as I know, first 13,250 Swedish kroners used to be tax free. Again, I have no idea about it. You had to find it by your own. It is not applicable to me as as someone who's promoting higher education. But yes, they have some of the highest taxes in the world. But anyways, it's well worth it because that's how they fund the education system, the healthcare sector, and everything else, and even allow international students to come and access their benefits. So sorry, Faushan, I have no idea about it, honestly. So owner is asking, can you please have your contact number? Yeah. At the end of this session, I will give you a clear idea about the contact details. The easiest way to contact us is to apply for, you can use your, in case if you don't pick up the phone, feel free to WhatsApp us because we pretty much answer every single WhatsApp conversation at the end of every day. So that's probably the best way to approach us. Pieris is asking how long it takes for the process. It's a good question because we start accepting new applications from 1st of June. And then once our 60 to 70 limit is reached, we stop. That's how we have done this over the last few years. So in terms of the time period, the actual application process start from 1st of October, say for around 1st or mid of October, and it can go up to about the month of January. If you apply on time, this is the time of year you receive your admission decisions. Between the month of March to April, you have your admission decisions, and then you can pick the best option available to you and start your visa process. If things go all well, we can complete the entire process in the month of June or so. So that's the usual timeline. This again can be vary from one applicant to another, but end of the day, applying for these countries is pretty much a year-long process. So, but anyway, again, we can assist you along the way, and if you have your credentials right, you do have higher chances to smoothly make it. Imanta is asking, I think pretty much the same question, latest deadline to proceed. You can approach us after 1st of June, Imanta, and then we can initiate the process for next year. G1, GB1 is asking, is this possible if a person doesn't have a class in bachelor's and a master's degree, but to apply for PhD? Theoretically, yes, you can apply directly, but the issue is, Ms. Sundarwell, that we're not able to assist you with that because applying for a PhD is a completely different process. You have to find, but I recommend you to start with the websites of each and every university available in these countries, where you can, if you go through the employment section, these PhD candidateships are usually advertised under the employment section. So if you find something interesting, and if you feel that you'll qualify, you might be qualified for that particular opportunity, feel free to approach them directly. And in case if you have any questions about the visa process, you can always approach us, and we are more than happy to share whatever information I know. But in terms of the application process, different from one research opportunity to another, and it's always better if you can approach them directly. One of these asking, can we apply just after A-levels without any bachelor's? You can apply using your bachelor's, but then again, we don't recommend you to apply through us. The reason is our primary focus has always been on masters. And as an individual applicant, you can apply through us if you really want to. But to be honest, the application process for bachelor's is very simple, and especially if you're an individual applicant, you can even apply directly and save so much of money. But it's up to you. Yes, if you have passed all your subjects at A-levels, we can apply. But the only thing is you have to have sufficient funds for at least like the first year, and also living expenses for the first 6 months, because you will be by your own once you are there. You don't have anyone to support you, especially if you're unmarried. So that's a bit of a concern. If you're confident about your abilities to survive, and if you have at least a kind of a minimal capital required, then even we can assist you. But my advice is to apply directly, because applying for a bachelor's is a very simple process. And since you are an unmarried applicant, even the visa process is straightforward. You don't need that many documents or reasons to give since you are a younger applicant. But still, we can help you out if you want us to. Dasani is asking, is there any possibility of having opportunity to join in masters with 3-year BSc with 7 years experience? It depends, Dasani. You don't have this requirement in place for Finland even as of now. But again, the issue is, if you apply through us, you pay us quite a lot of money. We know it's a large amount of money. So we don't have that confidence to deliver something positively if you don't have a 3-year, like a 4-year bachelor's, or if you don't have a master's followed by 3-year bachelor's. So because when you apply through us, you completely miss the opportunity to apply for Sweden. We only can apply for Finland. And Finland is far more competitive than Sweden. So end of the day, we cannot really assure you of a placement for Finland. We can do the same thing for Sweden because we have been doing it for a long time. And usually if you have certain set of requirements met, you can at least receive an admission from Sweden. But in your case, if you miss it, then chances of getting admitted to a Finnish university is like always 50-50. So it's up to you. If you want to apply, we can help you out. But then again, your options are likely to be limited to Finland out of the options we deliver. Sahasra is asking, I did my bachelor's at BTS in biomedical science affiliated by Oxford Groups. Do I need to complete IS? Yes, unless you have physically completed your degree in the UK, you are expected to take up IS for every other country other than Sweden. For Sweden, you don't need IS since you have completed a British degree, and they accept offshore degrees without any doubt. So, but for every other country, Norway or Finland or even Estonia, you need an IELTS score. And again, you cannot apply for Estonia with an offshore degree. So if you apply through us, out of the options we offer, we can apply only for Sweden with your degree if you are planning on not taking up any English proficiency test score. But if you can help us with IELTS, we can even add options like Finland, which kind of increase your chances to be able to secure a scholarship. Subhash is asking what are the main universities granting scholarship. All universities have some kind of scholarship opportunities in this part of the world. So there's no a single university that I can name. Every single university has some kind of scholarship pathway. Imanta is asking fully funded scholarship are still applicable 3-year bachelor's with a first class. It's not about scholarships. In order to apply for a university in Sweden, you need a 4-year bachelor, especially if it's from Sri Lankan university. If you are graduated from a foreign university, then this this requirement doesn't apply to you. But for all Sri Lankan university, if you are graduated from a local university, it has to be the 4 years in length, or you have to have a master's degree completed after your 3-year bachelor's. Anyway, this requirement is set by the Swedish authorities. So this is applicable only for Sweden. If you have a first class degree, or if you have some confidence about your merits, you can apply for Finland without any issue. Sandamini asked, what if we get the offer from a university master's without a scholarship, we are unable to pay the fees, or we reject it, will that affect our future applications? No, there's nothing like that. You can do it if you want to. So it's entirely up to you. Again, I have merit pass in masters. It's possible to apply for. It's not about your merits. It's about your research interest and how will your interest align with the interest of your research supervisor. So if the basic requirement is to apply, is to have a bachelor's and a master's and some kind of research experience and some kind of exposure or working experience and all that. So if you have it already, it's better to apply directly. Look into these positions. Mostly these options are advertised under the employment pages of these university websites. Write to them directly and see if you can find something. Unfortunately, as a third party, we can do much when it comes to PhDs because we don't have that knowledge in every single area. But we can certainly advise you with the visa process if you want any help from us. But our service is actually limited to masters. Subhash is asking, in your opinion, what country among these is more easy to proceed? Well, all these countries are pretty easy. The issue is you have to have an admission. And if you have a scholarship, things will always be better because you don't have that kind of financial stress on you about the tuition fees and all that. Anyway, these things are applicable only for then like normal people like us. If you're super wealthy, there's no question at all about the expenses and all that. But I know all of us have some kind of financial difficulties, and that's why I'm kind of telling these things in advance, so what's the kind of real environment to expect once you arrive in these countries. So every single country has a very straightforward kind of an easy process. So the question is whether you can apply for a scholarship or not, whether you can secure a scholarship or not. That's something you have to apply and see if it works for you. Piris is saying, I'm a fresh graduate. Is that okay? Yeah, absolutely. Apart from the Swedish Institute Scholarship, for any other option, your working experience doesn't matter much. The selections are mostly made based on your academic merits. Latvia is asking at what point of time in application process do you have to complete IELTS? Well, you can apply in advance if you apply to us, but we expect you to have your IELTS ready at least by the mid of October, because otherwise we'll run out of time for the process. Dasuni is saying, is there any possibility of having opportunity to join with a master's with a 3-year visa? I already covered that, I think. Uh, mm, you can apply for a master's in Finland or Norway or even Estonia, but to apply for Sweden, you now need a 4-year degree. Sandamini is asking, is it possible to apply for a research-based master's and secure a scholarship? Yeah, why not? You can try to apply, but that's a good question. All these countries offer their programs for 2 years in length. The first year is coursework based. The second year is usually research based. The second year, there's no coursework at all in most of these universities. So if you are looking for like entirely research based programs, yes, there are some options, but the numbers are not that good. For example, you cannot expect to apply through us, and then expect a completely research-based master's program because there's no many numbers we can try together. Because the trick of applying for these countries is the multiple number of options you apply, the higher chances you'll have to secure an admission and a scholarship. That's the system. That's how it works. So in your case, if you want to stick to entirely research-based masters, we may only have about 2, 3, 4 options altogether. That's not enough for us to, you know, assure you something. But all these masters again, 2 years in length, and the entire second year is focused on research. So Ishari is asking, any difference between applied sciences universities and other normal? Yes, applied sciences universities are known as polytechnics. It was, these universities were called polytechnics when we started our business back in 2010. Then they changed their names to University of Applied Sciences. The reason is they are more for like a vocational training based ones. They don't conduct research. I don't think they have like good research environments. So we as a policy do not apply for USS when it comes to masters. Our services are limited to research units, and there's 9 of them. They have Eastern Finland University, they have Abo Academy University, University of Oulu, Javaskaila, and they have uh, University of Helsinki, Aalto University, and University of Lapland, and this another university I miss, University of Turku. So these are the universities we apply. And anyway, if you want to apply for a US, it's entirely up to you. There's nothing wrong with those universities, just that we want to strictly, focus on research-based universities because they have higher requirements, but it's more sustainable for us as a business, to continue this in the long run. Didi is asking, I have a general bachelor's degree and currently following master's not completed. Is there any possibility to apply? You can certainly apply, but after completion of your master's, as I said again, these requirements are only applicable for Sweden. You can apply for anywhere else, but my opinion of doing that is that if you apply through us, you pay us almost 1,000 Australian dollars. And then if we can only apply one option for you, it's a very high probability for us not to be able to deliver something to you in return, which we really don't like because the reputation, whatever reputation we may have, is because we have done our, service genuinely, and we have tried our level best to secure something positively. So that's the reason. If you have a 3-year bachelor, we highly recommend you to apply directly for other countries. And if it doesn't work, you can always come back to us when you complete your master's, so we can help you out. Anuradha is asking under the English requirements, PT, okay, absolutely. The general requirement for PT for most masters, it was 62 each. PT is acceptable now by every single university. Kasun is asking pretty much the same question, PT or IS. You can do both. If it's IS, you need 6.5 overall with 6 for each component. If it's PT, you're expected to have at least 62 for most masters. Can you know the cost for GMAT as well? Well, as far as I know, there's only one test center in Sri Lanka. I'm not sure if there are any other places, but there's some place called Knowledge Merchandising. I'm telling you the name because they're the accredited test center for Sri Lanka. The last time I checked. So I asked from one of my applicants who completed GMAT how much is She paid for that, and if I'm not mistaken, it was around 50,000 rupees as of last year. I have no idea about the current rates, so you can directly call them and check. Uh, Dasuni is asking, I have 3-year Ireland BSc completed remotely. Yeah, I assume this is from NIBM, and there's no question you can apply with the 3-year degree. As I said earlier, this 3-year requirement is only applicable for Sri Lankan universities. Even if you have completed a British degree externally in Sri Lanka, or even if you have completed your Irish degree externally as like offshore applicant in Sri Lanka, this doesn't apply to you. You can qualify still. Deepal is saying, I don't have a bachelor's degree, but having local postgraduate diploma and MBA in Spain. Unfortunately, no, Deepal, we cannot help you out because they have a very strict requirement that you have to have completed your qualification from an accredited university to be considered for a higher qualification. So best thing is you can apply directly and see if they accept. They may accept some qualifications. But as I said earlier, if you apply through us, we need to ensure that we are able to deliver something written. And for that matter, we cannot really help you out at the moment. And I appreciate your understanding on that. Sachin is saying, I have a special degree in paramedicine with a first class and GPA of 3.8. I'm currently contacting supervisor. One of them have no positions available. I didn't try these countries yet. Will I be able to find postgraduate programs? Well, certainly, if you apply for a master's, even we can help you out. And that's anyway, that's something I have to do because if you apply for these Nordic countries, having a bachelor's alone won't help much. Your qualification will work in countries like Australia or the US or anywhere else, but generally for European countries, there's a pattern. You have to complete your bachelor's and then your master's and then the doctoral program. So you can approach them, but practically, I don't think you had that many chances, especially in case if you don't have a master's with you for European countries. But you certainly have increased chances for your master's since you have first class. Imant is saying if the application process starts from your side, you will proceed to only one country or 2, 3 countries based. Well, we apply multiple options together as much as possible. That's what we do. That's what we always encourage our applicants to complete IELTS, so that will give them access to countries like Finland. We apply for as many options as possible and every single scholarship opportunity as well, because our primary requirement and the things that will make us happy the most is the number of scholarships we receive every year. Lakshmi is asking, is it advisable to apply for US instead of universities in Finland? It's up to you. You can apply. There's no requirement for you not to. If you fulfill the minimum requirement, you can always apply, and I think you have increased chances as well. It's just that we don't really apply for these universities. Even I don't understand the reason sometimes, but I need to stick to research universities because I understand it's competitive, yes, but it's very easy in some other aspects. For an example, if you apply for a visa, the university is very good. You have excellent track record from previous Sri Lankan students. The chances are very high for you to apply for a scholar, visa successfully. About UASS is the same still, but I think things will change in future because you have a mix of bachelor's and master's applicants. Because the behavior of the average Sri Lankan student has a great impact on the students who want to come after them. So that's the reason why we stick to research universities, because we get good high quality applicants as a firm, and it's very easy to work with them and very easy to process with them. For USS, you can apply. There's nothing stopping you. They have plenty of options that will give you increased chances to be selected. But as a policy, we don't process applications for those kind of universities at the master's level. We also do a small number of bachelor's applicants every year, but we don't apply for USS for masters. Lakvijay is asking, when do we need to submit our documents for you to assess? After 1st of June, you can, feel free to contact us with your documents and we can start the process for next year. Sandamini is saying, as for the research-based masters, do we have to find a supervisor individually by submitting a research proposal and then proceed through you? What's the general procedure? Not really. For most research-based masters, they have they have given a certain criteria. You may have to write a research proposal and all that, but you can start the process with us first and then move to the requirements set by the supervisor. But again, as I said, they can be only like about less than 5, 6 entirely research-based programs in these countries. So there's no possibility for us to help you out unless you're willing to apply for like a general master's options, which has a combination of both coursework and research. Because in order to receive an admission successfully, we need to have at least 8 or 9 options in hand that gives you more chances to be selected. So applying for, because they have research-based masters in electronic engineering in Sweden. They have a research-based master's program in chemistry in Sweden, and they have another research-based program at the University of Eastern Finland in Finland. At the moment, those are the only 3 entirely research-based masters I could recall, and that's not good enough. That's the issue. I recommend you to apply directly in that case, so you'll have better chances. And even if you fail, there won't be any loss of money. And if I move to the next question, let me quickly check. Yeah, that's the end of the questions, and I'll end the session for today. And thank you everyone for joining me this morning. I hope I managed to deliver at least some of the information you might be expecting from us. And in the future also, we'll continue to start new sessions, that'll help you understand about the whole application process and what to expect after that. So thank you again. And I'll move to the contact number one, since there's a request. You can contact us after 1st of June. And there's 2 numbers we use. The first one is, the local number. You can contact Ravish, and in case if you don't pick up, just leave a message with your requirement and we'll definitely call you back on the same date. And the second one is mine. You can always WhatsApp me on this number, and I'm more than happy to be in touch. And you can even ask any questions you may have, even if you are a direct applicant. We'll try to answer you as much as possible. Because as I said, the whole intention is to see a sustainable community of Sri Lankan students choosing these countries. And then every one of us, have some options open to us, at least for the next 5-10 years. So that's the whole purpose. Thank you. And, thanks for joining me at a short notice. I sent these invitations last night. Thanks again. Have a lovely rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.